welcome back to the channel. Thanks for coming by. I hope you're good. This is a very strange place to start the vlog, but me and Jensen have a stack of books to take back to the library, and I am going to be looking for some random books in the library. I don't have anything in mind, just going to see what strikes my fancy, and we're going to read them. Sound good?
Yeah.
Sounds good. I'm going to go because this is awkward, even though I'm outside my house. Okay, bye! Hello. It is many hours later. I was totally going to film stuff inside the library. I actually filmed us like walking in. I filmed Jensen doing a little dance, which you probably haven't seen because I walked in and the library was pretty busy. Like, it's not a huge library anyway, and there was somebody sat in one of the chairs right in the section that I wanted to be in, so then I felt a bit awkward getting my camera out. There was like some guys playing chess, and I just kind of didn't want to disturb anyone, which wasn't what everyone was doing because some people were talking like really loud, but the point is I didn't feel comfortable filming, so I didn't. I did, however, find 4 books to read for this vlog, and I was totally going to tell you about them as soon as I got home, but we got distracted. We had lunch and watched some Simpsons, then I was editing. Jensen's been sat in this chair while I edited so that we could just kind of chill together. He was on his Switch, we were listening to lo-fi music. It was really nice, and now we're going to go and make some popcorn and watch a film. But first, let me tell you about these books. So I did go in with absolutely zero plan, and whilst I was in there I saw a couple of things that made me think of books that I wanted, which they didn't have, which was really annoying because I wanted to get Before the Coffee Gets Cold because I saw the second book on like a display, but they didn't have the first book, so that was annoying. And then I saw I think it's Kazu Ishiguro. Ishiguro? Oh my god, why does this always happen? I can say it in my head, can't get it out of my mouth. It's the author that wrote Clara in the Sun. It wasn't Clara in the Sun, it was a different one. It's got a blue cover, and that one doesn't appeal to me, but I thought, oh, that reminds me, I'll find Clara in the Sun. They didn't have Clara in the Sun. I was starting to lose hope, I'm not gonna lie, because I've been around quite a lot of the library and nothing was really speaking out, like jumping out at me. All the graphic novels that were there were either ones that I have requested in, read, and then returned, and now they're just sat in my library, or the art style was not it. So I didn't find any graphic novels. The horror section is so tiny, and it was mostly Stephen King, which I have so much Stephen King on my shelf to read, which is going to be contradictory. But yeah, so most of them I was like, oh no, because the ones that I've got at home I want to read first. You'll see why it's contradictory. And then the fantasy section is fairly small as well, and wasn't really feeling anything because I'm not really feeling fantasy still. So I went into like the general fiction. I looked at classics, no classics jumping out at me. I thought maybe there might be some of the darker ones, but no, couldn't find anything in there. And I went around quite a bit of it, and I said to Jay, like, this might be a bust. I said, because I can't really find anything. So he was like, oh, I'm gonna give you luck, mummy, and like gave me like a big hug, and immediately I found something, no joke. So then he got really excited and kept trying to give me luck, and I ended up finding 4 things. So I'm not saying that I have a magical child, I'm just saying that whatever he did, it worked. So out of the 4 things that I picked, 3 of them I have never heard of, but at least one of those I've heard of the author. So 2 of them, don't know the author, don't know the book. 1 of them, know the author, don't know the book. 1 of them, it was on my kind of radar. So let's talk about them. So the one that I hadn't heard of, but I do know the author, is Printer's Devil Court by Susan Hill. And this is a ghost story. I thought this was a cute little hardback. It's not a paperback, it's a hardback. Wow. I don't think it's going to take me huge amounts of time to read. The pages are very small. There's a couple of illustrations. The writing's fairly big. And this, if I remember rightly, is about 3 medical students who make an unholy pact, and they do like some experiments about the boundaries that separate the living and the dead. And then one of them goes back to Printer's Devil Court where they did these experiments, where they lived, I think, and has to face up to it. I don't know whether this is like literal demons or his inner demons, but it does say strange events make clear that his youthful actions have had consequences worse than anything he could have imagined. Could be good, could not be. I did try and read The Woman in Black by Susan Hill once before, and I couldn't get into it, even though I really like the stage show and the movie's fine, but the actual book I was really struggling to get into. So we'll see. Like I say, I don't think it will take me a huge amount of time to read. It is only 106 pages and it's very small. So that's one. Now we've got the two that I have no prior existing knowledge of. So the first one is called Gratitude, and it's by Delphine Devigan. I'm not sure. I don't know. This might be translated. Oh, it is translated from the French by George Miller. That makes sense. So this is about a guy called Jerome, who is a speech therapist working in a care home, and he has a new patient called Mishka, and she's carrying some kind of guilt that she's had since she was a little girl, and she's very haunted by it. But she's like running out of words. Mishka doesn't know how to repay her debt, and as her words slide out of her grasp, time is running out. I thought it sounded weird. I don't think I'm explaining these very well, but that's because I'm trying not to just read out the synopsis, but I don't know what they are yet because I haven't read them. So again, this is also not incredibly long. It's 143 pages. I ended up actually with all like fairly short books, and it wasn't intentional. It was just the ones that were kind of leaping out at me, because the next one is called Wivenhoe by Samuel Fisher, and this is about a guy who is brutally murdered, and it's like set in an alternate reality, an alternate version of now. It says set in an alternate present, Wivenhoe is a haunting novel about a world not unlike our own, struck down and on the edge of survival. Taking place over 24 hours, we see how one small community reacts to social breakdown and isolation, because this guy murders another guy with an axe and no one tried to stop him. I thought it sounded really cool, and again, only 151 pages. I swear to God this was not intentional, but I've ended up with some really short books. So hopefully these should be like pretty quick to get through. There's something about these two in particular. Never heard of them, don't know the authors. There was something about them when I read them. I was like, yes, that sounds like a bit of me. So that's the first three. And then here's where I was a contradictory bitch saying like, oh, I don't want to get any Stephen King because I've got so much. I got Wendy's Button Box. This is written by Richard Chismer and Stephen King. But this has been on my radar for a really long time. I really like Richard Chismer's writing because he wrote Chasing the Bogeyman and its sequel, and I just absolutely love those. And this is about this woman called Gwendy. I genuinely don't remember what this is. I may be mixing two things up, but if it's worth thinking, well, whatever it is, I've wanted to read it anyway. But at the end of the kind of synopsis says, on a bench in the shade sits a man in black jeans, a black suit coat, and a white shirt unbuttoned at the top. On his head is a small, neat black hat. The time will come when Gwendy has nightmares about that hat. And I'm sure that this got turned into a movie. Either it got turned into a movie or something with a very similar premise did. I obviously have forgotten. But those are the four things that I'm going to read for this vlog. They're all pretty short because even Gwendy's Button Box is only, what, 164 pages. So are these all novellas? I don't know. I've ended up with 4 really short books that I'm going to read for this. It was not intentional. I just grabbed things that were speaking to me. We've got a ghost story. I've got some weird kind of horror thing. Some, I don't know what this is, murder thing. I don't know. And then this also sounds like a mystery. They all sound a bit weird. They all sound a bit creepy. I guess we'll find out. So I don't know what I'm going to read first, but I will sure as shit update you when I do. You're awkwardly propped up on my bookcase because I can't be bothered to get any of my stands out. You can't tell what it is. I started The Printer's Devil Caught by Susan Hill as my first pick. I took the dust jacket off because it was like super loose. I normally take it off anyway. I am 25 pages in, right, and I'm feeling stupid. I thought Susan Hill wrote a long time ago. From her writing style, or what I remember of it from Woman in Black, I thought that this woman was writing in like the 1800s. So I was trying to find out when this book was originally published. And the front of the book said published in 2014. I was like, well, obviously not. Obviously not. Maybe this edition. Then I looked it up, and this woman is only 82 now. I am so confused because the writing style is something that I would class as being written in like the 1800s. Like maybe 1880, that's still the 1800s, but you know what I'm saying? Like 1880, that kind of time. I have never been more shocked in my life. Never. I feel like this is set in the 1800s. I'll be honest, I kind of have plucked that century out because that just feels right, but I don't know. This is the style that the people have, um, which looks 1800s-y to me. And maybe she writes in that way to get the setting. I'm struggling with this information because in my head this was an old book. Like I was reading like a old book and it was published in 2014. So it's 10 years old and I was thinking closer to 100. At least I'm confirming that I have no idea what these books are, that I have literally gone off of what I read at the library. I haven't looked these books up. I don't know anything about them apart from Gwendy's Button Box. That is it. What do I have to say about the first 25 pages? I mean, not a lot. I don't think this is going to get a super high rating just because I'm slightly struggling with the writing style. I always have this problem when I read classics, which I now am aware this is not one of. When I read classics, I always have this struggle. But I have been gelling more with it, with like Frankenstein and Dracula and The Picture of Dorian Gray, which I really, really enjoyed. I loved all three of those. So maybe I'll get over that. I am just purely stuck on this fact that this book is only 10 years old and that Woman in Black was only written in the 80s. Wow. Who knew? Wow. Anyway, so basically what's happened is there are these doctors, they are living in a house together, and almost out of the blue, someone brought up the story of Lazarus from the Bible, which I'll be honest, my only knowledge of that is that there is a supernatural episode called Lazarus Rising, where someone is risen from the dead. And that is apparently the story of Lazarus. He was risen by Jesus after being dead for 4 days. And now they want to know whether they can do that with science. And I have like 75 pages left. I'm sorry, 80 pages left. So, yeah, I mean, I read that in like 20 minutes. So I don't think this will take me long to read, but I'm not going to read it tonight because it's late and I want to go and watch something before bed. So, yeah, this was a really pointless update because I don't know anything about the book. I was just having a crisis. I'm going to blame her stylistic choice for my confusion. Okay. Okay. Not the start I was hoping for the vlog, and this is going to be the quickest wrap up for a book I've ever done. I have finished Printer's Devil Court and I'm going to give it a generous 2 stars. I'm feeling generous. Literally the only reason I'm not giving it a 1 star is because for me, normally with like a 1 star it has to do something offensive or be like the worst thing I've ever read. Maybe this is a 1.5. We'll go with 2, we'll be generous. I am so confused by this book. I thought it was set in the 1800s and then suddenly we were talking about the Blitz. There had been a passage of time, but I don't know when this story takes place. I don't know over how many years it takes place. I mean, kind of like 70 years. So you would think that would kind of work out, except that it doesn't, because where the Blitz is mentioned, he's still fairly young, and then he's like, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. It's about this guy, and when he's like a young man, 2 people that he lives with, he's studying to be a doctor. 2 people that he lived with, they do this experiment to raise the dead, and he witnesses it one time and then is like, I don't know, he goes off. We spend more time discussing the main character's kind of like life than we do the actual events. He leaves London and then doesn't go back for years, and when he does go back, finds the ghost of the woman. I mean, this is all spoilers, but honestly, finds the ghost of the woman walking around the graveyard and tries to help her. And there was like one small moment where I thought, oh, that's interesting, because basically they took the life of this really old guy just as he died, and then just as this young woman was kind of failing, they gave it to her. But then when he found this woman's ghost, she had the voice of an old man. That was interesting. There was nothing frightening about this book. I saw someone say it was like spooky and atmospheric. It's not. I really, really, really detest the writing style. Detest is such a strong word, but I've said it, it's out there. I will never read anything by Susan Hill again. I feel like my preconception of her being a writer from like the 1800s has confused everything, because that's how she writes. And I really don't like that old writing style. We've talked about it those times, me and classics, we have issues. And I have been enjoying these kind of like darker classic, these horrors, these gothic classics, which I kind of thought this was. So to find out that this was written in 2014 and it's a purposeful choice to write in that style, the mind boggles, because it was not good. It took me like 3 days to read 100 pages in this writing style. So not off to a great start. I don't know what I'm picking up next, but I'm going to go because the sprints are over. But yeah, not off to a win. So here's the thing with having picked like 4 pretty short books. It's kind of hard to update you, or at least it should be. I've picked up Wivenhoe. Wivenhoe? I am almost 70 pages into this book, which is 150 pages. So I'm roughly like halfway-ish. And I don't know whether I'm enjoying it. I'm just not sure. It's very slow paced. It's taken me a while to get this far in. And part of me was planning on finishing it tonight, but that ain't gonna happen because it's like 10 o'clock and I want to watch The Boys. But and Vox Machina. But it's kind of interesting, even though it's very slow and even though I'm a little bit confused. I keep saying I don't know whether I'm enjoying it, but I do want to read it, if that makes any kind of sense. So this is set over 24 hours, right? And you are literally dropped in just as it starts. And it starts with one guy killing another guy with an axe. You don't see it, it's the aftermath of it. So it's one of our main characters, Joe, coming across this scene and then the aftermath of it. Except it's also set in like this weird version where England is stuck in a endless winter, which makes me just think of Otherworldly by F.T. Lukens. But I think that's just because I've read it recently. Basically, England has been covered, or maybe Britain, I'm not sure. I'm assuming it, I don't know. And this is my main thing with it, is I'm almost halfway through, and because it's over such a short period of time and you're with a very small amount of characters and there's not a lot happening, because this is a small village where hardly anyone is left. The snow goes up to like the roofs of the houses. There's no internet, there's no electricity. They're relying on generators and oil heaters, I think. And the phone masts are mostly down. They occasionally come back up, so they don't get a lot of information about what's going on outside. And obviously they know what's happened. So there's no like exposition where they're explaining it to you. There's just kind of like little things that come up in conversation, like, oh, do you remember this? Do you remember where you were when this happened? Or a character thinking back on how things have changed. And I'm not really sure what this event is. I'm not sure what's caused it. I'm not sure how long it's been going on for. I don't know. But I am intrigued by that. Like, I kind of want to know. Obviously, there is still a world. Like, it's not completely like a post-apocalypse type thing, because one of the characters, her parents is now in Spain, and every so often she gets to speak to them and she's like, oh, it's warmer there. So I think maybe it is the world. Maybe it's a global warming thing. I honestly don't know, but it is set in our time, or 2022 when it was kind of released. And there's a lot of references that are very understandable, saying like, I never thought I'd miss daytime TV, what I wouldn't give for a Homes Under the Hammer rerun. I mean, it's very British. There's a lot of British slang in it, and that kind of side of it is quite cool, and it's very much kind of a small village mentality. So I'm enjoying that. I'm just finding it so slow, because slowly we're kind of being drip fed the build up to this event, because people kind of did see something coming. They maybe didn't realize that this guy was going to kill this other guy, but there has kind of been this build up. Like, there's a lot of tension anyway, because there's so few people left. Everybody's in each other's pockets. Like, they're so sick of the same people all the time, and there are people that are passing through all the time, and they piss people off as well, just because like they're passing through to get to somewhere else, and they call them grockles, which I don't understand. But Ash did help me look that term up, because I thought there was a section where they said "why I man," and I sent it to Ash, and she was like, what are you reading? And then I asked her whether she knew this term grockles, because I thought maybe that was a similar thing from her neck of the woods, and it's not, but it is like a derogatory term for like holiday makers or people like passing through. So that made sense. I guess I kind of feel like I'm more being told there's tension than I'm actually feeling tension, and there's something about the writing style that I'm struggling to get into it. Like, it has taken me a long time to get to page, what was it, 68, and I also thought it was like 100 pages, and I think that's why I was going to try and finish it, because I was like, only 40 pages to go. Psych, you're only halfway. I don't know. The thing is, because it's so short, it's a short period of time, and there's not a lot happened yet. I'm wondering whether it's kind of going to build up, and the further I go, the more tension will build, the more events will happen. I don't know. This is a really weird update, because I don't know how I feel about it. Part of me is bored, part of me is intrigued, and my reading mojo has been lacking. Like, it's the 11th of the month, and I have barely read a thing. The 2 books for this vlog and 2 manga volumes is all I've managed so far, and that is not ideal, because I have quite a bit to read. So anyway, I'm going to go and watch The Boys and Vox Machina, because I don't really have any brain power. I've left it till too late. I got sidetracked by stuff. I had like a 40-minute conversation with my mum. I had a long bath, and I didn't get out until 8:30. And by the time I kind of got sorted, done my hair, read a bit of this, it's now 10 o'clock. I'm going to get in bed and watch telly. That's what I'm going to do. But hopefully I'm going to finish this tomorrow or Saturday. We're going to speak on Saturday, and I will tell you whether this was worth it or not. I finally finished Whip and Hoe. Let's talk about it. For context, it is now Saturday. I've been reading this book for a week. I say reading very loosely. I really struggled with this. Rating wise, I think I'm going to have to give it a 2. Part of me is like, maybe give it a 3, because I can see how it would work for some people, but I'm not rating it based on how it would work for other people. I'm rating it based on how it would work for me, and it was dull. So nothing really happened, because you're dropped into this story, and that's perfectly fine, by the way. I actually quite like to be dropped into a story and figure out as it goes, with certain caveats. So I like this kind of slice of life situation that we have going on. We're dropped in, we're learning about what the world is like for these guys now, and we spend 24 hours with them after this event. Except nothing really happens. So all of the stuff has already happened. Like, the big event has already happened. All the big events have already happened. The murders happened. The freak snow has happened for like a year. Everything's already happened. And we spend 24 hours with these people as they think back on how things have changed. And it's just a lot of this guy and his mum. You go back between their 2 perspectives, and the guy is thinking about how things have changed, and he kind of doesn't want to leave his village because it's his village, and he knows there's something up with his mum, but he doesn't want to think about it, because there's nothing you can do anyway, because there's no doctors, there's no hospitals, and the guy that has killed this other man is his stepbrother. So then, in the mum's perspective, she is very confused, and she knows that she's ill. There's nothing she can do about it, because there's no doctors, no hospitals, and she just spends a lot of time thinking about her life and how things have changed. And there's like a few good moments. I wouldn't really say any of this was actual spoilers, but I'll put a spoiler tag here just for this section. Well, actually, before I put the spoiler tag, there is a trigger warning in this for SA, but it's after the fact. So, spoilers. The reason for his stepbrother having killed this guy is that he has sexually assaulted his partner, girlfriend, wife, I'm not really sure. So we'll go with partner. So then there's this discussion about why does his rage about it like take precedent over her feelings, because she didn't want him to do this. And now like all their lives have been thrown into turmoil, and it's all about Ian, the guy that was murdered, being the victim rather than Naomi, the woman that he sexually assaulted, being the victim. So that was some interesting discussions. There's some interesting discussions about grief and about, I say interesting, there's some discussions about grief, there's some discussions about motherhood and I guess like this need to protect your children and all this kind of stuff. But it was just so slow. And then the end was just like really lackluster. They keep mentioning bears. They keep mentioning bears. Did you see bears? Every time somebody comes through, they're like, oh, did you see any bears? This woman, the mother, is absolutely convinced that there are bears. And then at the end, and again, spoilers, at the end, when they're trying to flee and they're trying to convince these guys that come and drop supplies off, they're trying to convince them to take them with them. And it looks like somebody's going to out the fact that the stepbrother has just killed someone. A polar bear turns up and everyone gets distracted by the polar bear and then they leave, and that was the end. So I've just ruined it for you, but I did say spoilers. Genuinely, like, nothing really happened. I thought it was going to be so tense, man. I thought it was going to be like, you know, this guy had murdered someone and they were going to like actually think about what they could have done to stop it, because that was like what I thought the premise was, that they're thinking, oh man, we could have seen this coming, we should have stopped it, and then like the repercussions of it. I mean, one thing that I liked about it was that it was insular, right? But because it was so insular, because it was this like really small group of characters in a very like in one place, like there's not really anywhere, it was really hard for them to go, sort of thing. But because it was, I felt like we were focusing on the wrong people. We focused on Joe and Helen, Joe and his mum, right? I would have preferred, I think, to have it focus on Patrick, who is the stepbrother that committed the crime, and then there could have been some really hard discussions between him and Naomi about the situation, how it unfolded, why he did what he did, and why she would be angry about that, etc. Like that could have been, I would have preferred to have those discussions, and probably Ian's parents, and seeing their grief and coming to terms with the fact that he has been murdered, but is also not innocent, not an innocent party, if that makes sense. Instead, we're focusing on these two who spend the entire time just thinking about the past and how the snow has changed things. I'll stick with the two. So I have no plans today. Well, I say that. I have many things I want to do today, but most of it is reading, and then I would like to play Baldur's Gate, and then I would like to watch Vox Machina, because I haven't watched it for like a week, even though I've been saying I'm going to, and part of me is putting it off because of something that happened in the last episode. Don't come for me. But I am repping Percy quite extensively today, because Percy is my favourite character from Vox Machina. I have my Percy top on, and also this arrived this morning, which is a Percy themed mug. So I've got my tea in there. I've got this massive iced tea as well. I bought peach iced tea, and I made like actual ice and everything, even though it is not warm. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and bang out another book for this vlog. I have a lot of other things that I need to try and bang out today as well, reading wise. So I'm here. I'm parked here for the day. So hopefully in the next clip, I'll be halfway through the next book. I'll still be dressed exactly the same, and I'll still be in this exact spot, because that means that I did the thing. Please let me have done the thing. I'm so behind. It is some hours later. 2.5? I'm not sure. I've barely moved. I'm not halfway through the book. I finished it. I literally just read this in one sitting. It sounds a lot more impressive than it is. It's 164 pages. Some of the pages are like blank or full pictures, but I'll take it. This was so much easier to read than Wivenhoe. So much easier. So this is Stephen King and Richard Chizmar, right? But I feel like this is more Richard Chizmar than Stephen King. The writing style in this feels more like Chasing the Bogeyman than it does a lot of Stephen King books that I've read, where it's very, very descriptive. So this was a lot more fast paced. Obviously, it's a very short story, and it's basically about this girl. And when she's 12, some kid has started making fun of her weight, and she's trying to exercise over the summer and lose some weight. And then this guy appears and like gives her this box with all these buttons on, and it's like really vague about what it does. But he says, you know, if you pull this lever, this chocolate will make you feel really full and like you won't crave stuff anymore. And on the other side, it gives her like something really valuable. And then there were these 8 buttons on the top, which he's super vague about. He's like, the red one, you know, it will give you whatever you want. The black one's pretty dangerous, and the other ones represent the continents. And that's what he does. He just gives this box to this 12-year-old girl, and her life starts getting really good. Like, the chocolate makes her not crave stuff. It really makes her feel satisfied, so she's not like snacking as much anymore, and she gets really popular, and she gets really good at sport, and she's really good at school, and it all seems to be going quite well. But there's this thing with the box, like it's playing on the back of her mind all the time, and things happen that make her really like scared of the box and really wary about it, and it kind of like starts to have more of a negative effect. It was so good. Like, I'm not going to say it's a 5-star because it wasn't. I would say it was a strong, solid 4-star, and I definitely want to read the rest of this because I know that this is a series. I think there's at least 3 books. I don't know if it'll be listed in here because no, I don't think so. There's it's Gwendy's Button Box is obviously the first one, and then there's at least 2 other books that have Gwendy in the title, but I don't remember what they're called. I'm definitely going to look at getting the other 2 from the library because I would really like to know what happens next and how her life progresses. One thing I will say is you can always tell when Richard Chizmar or and Stephen King are writing a book, at least from my experience, because the main character is always a writer, or it's always thrown in about writing. Like, I can think of, I mean, obviously Chasing the Bogeyman, of course he's a writer because he's supposed to be Richard Chizmar, but like The Shining, he's a writer. Actually, am I just making this up? I swear in other Stephen King books they're always writers. I can't think of any books that I've read. Anyway, that was just an observation that I had. It was thrown in there and I was like, of course. But yeah, really, really enjoyable. I don't really have like too much to say other than what I've already said because I would go into spoilers and I don't really want to because it's such a short book. I don't want to go into like specific events. I will say, again, trigger warnings for SA, so that is something to be very mindful of if you are thinking of picking it up, because yeah, I can see this being quite triggering for some people, and also for suicide, trigger warnings for suicide. I made it sound like, oh, her life gets really good, and it does until the bad stuff starts happening. I really like Gwendy as a character because obviously she's so young when you get to know her and you watch her go through like middle school and high school, and yeah, some of what the box does for her is really good, but it does have like this effect of making her one of the popular girls, and there's some issues with like friends and a lot of jealousy and stuff like that. And it was interesting to see how she handled that. She had friends, right, but she felt like quite an isolated character, but not because she was not a nice person. Like, she did come across as like a good person, but she just kind of seemed to be on her own quite a lot, which is not necessarily a bad thing because, you know, I like to spend quite a lot of time on my own as well. But she was a very strong character. She had a clear sense of right and wrong. She took a lot of things that happened to heart and she learned from them, and she did go through quite a few things considering it's only like 164 pages. Like, she did go through quite a bit. She was very clever, very strong-willed. I really liked her. The guy in the hat, oddly menacing considering that he just was very polite and nice the whole time. There's just something very menacing about him, not gonna lie. So even though probably has the least amount of footage. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think this is gonna be a very long vlog because trying to say less spoilers in my updates. I feel like lately my vlogs have been getting out of control because I'm telling you like the full synopsis for no reason. So I'm trying to curb that. And now I'm panicking that it's gonna be too short, but it is what it is. I've said my thoughts. This is the win so far, thank God, because it's been two 2 stars and a 4-star, right? So whew, we've broken the 2-star streak. Now I have one book left, and I left this one till last because I genuinely think I'm going to enjoy it the most. Now I'm worried that I should have left this one till last. I didn't want to leave this till last because I've read from Stephen King and Richard Chismer before, and I know that I like Richard Chismer's writing and I like some of Stephen King's writing, so this felt like a safer bet. And I guess I wanted to finish on more of a gamble. Look at me being a risk taker. I'm not going to read it right now, but I might start it today. The reading mojo has arrived. Oh, touch wood. Don't jinx it, for the love of God. I have not felt like reading all week, and all of a sudden today I parked here with my iced tea and some lo-fi and a candle, and just like that the reading mojo has arrived. Touch wood, please. So apologies for the fan noises, but it is too hot in here to turn it off. I am about halfway through Gratitude by Delphine de Vian, I think. It didn't actually take me that long to get this far, so I'm like 75 pages in, and it's been a fairly easy read. I just don't have the capacity to finish it tonight. I probably would have done it if I'd have started it earlier in the evening like I planned on, but I didn't end up getting in the bath until like 8 o'clock, and then I scrolled because of course I did, and then I read a little bit in the bath and a little bit now, but I really just need to watch some telly before bed, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to watch Vox Machina. Everyone's surprised. This isn't really what I thought it was. I definitely thought it was going to be darker. However, I'm only halfway through, so we could get darker, I guess. There's been like a few things, I should put that down. There's been like a few things that have been mentioned. There is some kind of mystery, but we're not really going into depth about it. What it is more is kind of look at what it means to grow old and how people perceive you, I guess. Because this lady that we're following is called Mishka, and although we never read from her perspective, like everything is about her. She is this older lady and she's going through the start of what I think is pronounced aphasia, so she's starting to have trouble remembering words, and she replaces words with other words that are similar, and she gets very confused around language. But she used to be, if I remember right, a photojournalist, and then she was a proofreader, so she's always had, like, words have always been a big part of her life. It says how she still gets the newspaper religiously even though she struggles to read it now and things like that. So for her to kind of be losing her words is a really big thing for her, and it's having a big impact on her. She's moved into this care home because she can't stay on her own anymore. She needs someone with her 24/7, and she doesn't have any family. There is a lady in this whose perspective we get from called Marie, and she is probably the closest thing to family that Mishka has, because she's like a daughter to her. Like, she's not her daughter, but she's almost like it, and Marie kind of checks in on her and gets her settled into the care home and comes to see her like once a week. And then we're also reading from the perspective of Jerome, which is Mishka's like voice therapist. What is he called? Speech therapist. Voice therapist. Her speech therapist, and he's trying to help her to remember the words and kind of cope with everything. It's also more than that, because we're also looking at things like regret and loss and almost like how old people can be treated, because she's not an idiot. She's just struggling to get her words out. Yet sometimes people speak to her like she's a child, and it's kind of like this regression in how she's being treated. Like, she's very frustrated with the fact that she can't do things for herself anymore, and people keep coming and doing things, even things that she thinks she's probably still capable of. Like, you can feel how frustrated she is. So even though it's not what I thought it was, I definitely thought it was going to be darker, but like I say, it could get darker in the second half. We don't know. There is something. I'm really enjoying it. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's gonna be a 5 stars or anything, but I am enjoying it, and I do think I could probably get this finished tomorrow, which would be good, because I do want to know, if that makes sense. Like, I have questions and I need the answers. But right now I'm going to go watch Vox Machina before bed. So I finished Gratitude. I'm going to give it 3 stars. This has not been the overwhelmingly successful vlog that I was hoping, but this was fine. I just feel like I got the wrong impression from the back, because I thought there was going to be some really dark secret that she'd been coping with her whole life, and I genuinely thought that this guilt that she had, I don't know, I thought there was going to be like a murder involved or something. And what it actually was, I'll put a spoiler, what it actually was is that she was a young girl, a Jewish young girl during the war, and her mother managed to kind of secrete her away before they got rounded up, and her parents died in the camps, and she was looking for the people that had raised her for 3 years because she didn't know their surnames and she'd been looking for them her entire life. And then as an old lady, she was going through this kind of aphasia and she was declining very rapidly, and she knew it was going to be kind of her last chance to show gratitude to them, which Gratitude, the title. And it's just, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It's very much more about growing old and having regrets and not feeling like you've expressed your thanks to the people that have done right by you in your life, and kind of that need to not make amends, that need to express that gratitude or show the people in your life how much they meant to you and the impact they had on your life. And it was well written, it was enjoyable for what it was. It just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So let's let's wrap up this vlog. What we have to bear in mind is that I went into my local library with absolutely no plan. I didn't have a plan. I was just looking for 4 to 5 books that sounded appealing based purely off the synopsis. I didn't look anything up on Goodreads. I didn't look for ratings. I just read synopsis and I thought, yeah, that sounds good. Did I read every synopsis in my library? No. So we also have to take into consideration that a lot of these, it was not even the covers, the spines that pulled me in. So there was something about the spines that made me go, let me have a look at that one. So there's probably other books that are much more suited to me. I just didn't find them this time, which means I'll just have to do it again, right? Because it was fun and I enjoyed kind of reading outside my comfort zone. I just could have done with some wins. So we started off with Printer's Devil Court by Susan Hill. Susan Hill was not a writer for me. I am still so shocked that this woman writes now, because I was convinced this woman was from the 1800s. That's how she writes. That is not a writing style that appeals to me. But I was like, hey, I'll try an old ghost novel. Oh, it's not actually an old ghost novel. It's just written like it is. Also, the story, not great. 2 stars. Wivenhoe by Samuel Fisher. I enjoyed parts of this. I thought the premise was really good, but it just, like, I got a bit bored. I got to about halfway and I was like, okay, I just want a bit more going on. We're 24 hours in this very isolated setting with this singular group of characters, which sounds phenomenal, but literally nothing happens. There's just a lot of like reminiscing and talking about the past. And I feel like the main event happens before the book. And I get it, because you're like picking up the pieces afterwards. I get the stylistic choice. It just didn't work for me. Then we have Gratitude for 3 stars. As I've said, I did enjoy this. It just was not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a lot darker than it was. It was more a kind of commentary on growing old and not wanting to go with regrets, if that makes sense. And that's just not what I thought I was getting. I thought I was getting something a lot darker, which means the win, and I don't know why I'm surprised, the win of the vlog is Wendy's Button Box by Rich Chismer and Stephen King. This is much more me. Out of everything, I thought this was most likely to work for me. I gave it a 4 stars. It wasn't like a 5 stars. We didn't get 5 stars in this vlog. We'll have to try again. But I did really enjoy this and I would definitely continue the series. I liked seeing Gwendy grow up from being like 12 to being an adult, and the effect that having this button box has on her and on her life. Obviously, I'm not going to go into details because this is not a spoilery section, but I thought it was really cool and I would really like to know how the rest of the series goes, because of events that happened in the first one. So here are the 4 very small books that I read for this vlog, and yet it took me so long to read them. I didn't have like the worst time, even though I give 2 of them 2 stars. Like this was a bad time. That was like the worst book of the vlog for sure. This was frustrating, but it was such a quiet read that I didn't really like hate it, even though I only gave it 2 stars. It was mostly I got a bit bored, but some of it I enjoyed. This one was fine. It just wasn't what I was expecting. Maybe if I'd gone into it with the right kind of frame of mind, it would have been great. But this was a great time. This was a fun time. I read this in like one sitting and I was shocked because the others took me so long to read. Maybe I shouldn't have been shocked. Maybe I should know myself better by now. Like I said, I went to the library with absolutely no plan. I didn't research, I didn't have any books in mind. And then as I was walking around, I had a couple of books in mind, couldn't find them. So maybe I need to do another library vlog, but with a bit more planning. Maybe I need to scope out what's there first, do some research, maybe even order some stuff in. I just wanted to go to the library and pick things up, but maybe that doesn't work, or maybe I just need to try again. Chloe from Chloe Reads Books recently did a library vlog where she kind of went in with prompts that her Patreon had given her, and I really like that idea. I might ask her if I can borrow that for next time. We'll see, because I really like that idea. Maybe having a bit more structure will help me. But that's it for this vlog. If you have any thoughts on any of the books that I read, let me know in the comments below. Or if you just want me to know you're here, that purple heart is always appreciated. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're not already subscribed and you'd like to see more content from me, remember to hit that button, leave a like if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!